Welcome to Balancing the Scales, the Economic Justice Report. This is your host, Vic Bernsdorf. Lots to talk about, lots to get to today. Let's start with a viewer comment. Daisy from Galt asked me, Vic, do you think we are in jeopardy of losing our democracy? Daisy, that's an excellent question. My opinion is that we may have already lost it. Neither party represents the American people anymore. Democrats used to, but in my opinion, half of them, if not more, maybe 60%, are corporate Democrats. So they don't really care that much about the American people. The average American person, they just pander to us, and then they end up doing what corporate America wants anyway. Republicans are 100% corporatists. We basically are in Rome in the last days. Tom Hartman once said, I watched a show, the Tom Hartman show many years ago. Back then, 7 years ago, he was saying that we are moving from a democracy into an oligopoly. Well, we already have an oligopoly, folks. Last week he was saying, and I believe him, that we're now moving from an oligopoly to a tyrannical government. And with Trump, that's exactly where we're going, especially if he wins the next election. Okay? Excellent question. Okay, let's move on now to the political commentary. And basically, let's define the word socialism. Again, I know I went over it in the past, but like Rule of 3, it takes a couple times to kind of sink in to understand new terminology. It's fairly new because even though Bernie Sanders has talked about it in his campaign when he was running, before him, no one ever talked about it. So let's talk about it again. Basically, socialism means not me, us. Bernie Sanders' slogan. What that slogan means to me is a system where everyone pays for the benefit of everyone. Okay? So all social needs are taken care of. Okay? I'm going to talk now about a socialist lady named Kshama Sawant. She is a Seattle City Council member, who was elected and re-elected. That's right. A socialist in Seattle was not just elected to City Council membership position. She was elected twice. She was re-elected to that position again. Okay? Can you imagine that? Okay? And Seattle of all places. Okay? And so there must be something to it. Let me read you something. I belong to the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. And this is what they define as a socialist. A person who believes in cooperative and democratic control of the economy and government by the people for the people. That's it. Okay? But like I said, a better example of socialism is this definition. A system where everyone pays for the benefit of everyone. Gee, you know what? It certainly sounds a lot like a tax system to me. Tax system that funds Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, all of our social programs. Okay, so topics for today. We got 3 economic justice stories and news topics to talk about. First one is why work has failed us. Next one is Americans are experiencing socialism for the first time. The last economic justice story of the news is America still a first world country? So, let's start with why work has failed us. My sources of information today come from getpocket.com, fastcompany.com, and commondreams.org. Now, as usual, let's watch a video clip, and then I'll come back and talk about it.
Today, a new study grabbed our attention. The middle class is no longer the majority in America. In 1971, 61% were considered middle class. Now that's down to 50%. Anthony Mason tells us why.
Meredith Riley, a 37-year-old social worker in New Jersey, used to think of herself as middle class.
It was the good life. It really was. It was wonderful. And now, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid.
Her county job, which paid about $50,000 a year, was eliminated in the recession. A single mother of 2, Riley now works 3 part-time jobs and makes less money.
I think the toughest part is not preparing a future for my children that my parents prepared for me.
Barely half of adults are now middle-income earners, defined as a household making between $42,000 and $126,000 annually. The percentage has been falling steadily since 1971.
Okay, so what's going on here? It used to be that throughout the 50s and 70s, one job was enough for you to get by on and live a middle-class lifestyle, right? In many states, college was free or very low cost. Well, those days are pretty much gone, right? What we have left is a shredded safety net and the cost of most life essentials that most Americans depend on. Well, now a lot of Americans are worried about it, being able to afford them. What life essentials am I talking about? Childcare, healthcare, college, and for paying for retirement. That doesn't even include long-term care and elder care and so forth, right? None of those essentials are affordable anymore, okay? Let's take a deeper look and see what happened. What happened is that capitalism has shown us that corporate greed is wiping out the middle class. Flat out true, okay? In 1974, companies no longer share the profits of their workers' productivity. That was last year, okay? When 20 years before that, the more you work, the harder you work, the more efficiently you work, guess what? Your efficiency and higher productivity was reflected in additional income in your paycheck. That started stopping in the mid-70s, okay? It's harder for young couples to start families due to the high cost of childcare these days. Right? Here's some statistics. 44% of Americans rely on credit cards to make ends meet. Only 45% of Americans have enough to cover 3 months' worth of living expenses. And as of 2018, it costs $31,000 more to raise a child from infancy to the age of 18 than it did in 1960s. Right? Personal story now. It's a personal medical debt story coming from commondreams.org. And I quote, Hedda Martin's chemotherapy for breast cancer led to cardiac damage, and her physicians concluded that she needed a heart transplant. But a Michigan hospital committee rejected her. The decision was made by the committee that, I quote now, "You are not a candidate at this time for heart transplant because you can't afford it." That's what they said. The hospital committee recommended she start fundraising to collect at least $10,000. Okay? So Martin was forced to turn to the GoFundMe website, like 250,000 Americans do each year, to go online begging for medical help. You know, what's the takeaway from that video and from this discussion about how life is getting really tough, right? The takeaway is, folks, how can we keep calling this the greatest country on earth when we have developed pay-to-play systems designed to fleece us? That's what's happening. Capitalism is just running wild with no constraints. Unbridled capitalism has got us to this point. Okay, this story segment is called Americans Experiencing Socialism for the First Time. And before you watch the clip, let me my news sources. I get them from commondreams.org and freep.com. So let's watch a video clip regarding an individual who living in Sweden, experiencing the socialism there, and I'll come back and talk about it.
6 reasons why I have come to love Swedish taxes. This is an American. U.S. critics say that Swedes pay 56%, so the government takes over half of your money. And by the way, that's in the neighborhood of the top marginal tax rate that Bernie Sanders has suggested. Anyhow, U.S. critics say that Swedes pay 56%. Critics say that Swedes pay 56%, so the government takes over half your money. This is not true. 56% is the top marginal tax rate, what high earners pay on income over a certain amount in both state and local taxes. Only 15% of Swedes pay tax at this rate. It turns out that the average Swede pays less than 27% of his or her income in direct taxes. As I've written elsewhere, my wife and I pay about 22% of our U.S. income in taxes. Our Swedish income tax was 31%. So yes, our income taxes in Sweden were higher than the U.S., but we still paid less than a third in taxes. And you get far more for your taxes than you do in the U.S. In Sweden, college is free, and students get paid a housing stipend. A colleague's daughter, Kirsten, just completed a 5-year dental program. Her family paid nothing for her education. The Swedish government gave her $340 a month to live on when she was in school, and the right to borrow up to $700 more a month, and presumably at very, very favorable interest rates, if at all, which she did. And they point out that in the U.S., dental students graduate with an average of $215,000 in debt just from dental school alone.
That's quite interesting, huh? An American living in Sweden, paying higher taxes, and actually seeing the benefit of the higher taxes and what you get back from them, right? Let me give an overview of what's going on here, okay? To start, I'll read a quote I once heard from Jonas Mate, a Swiss business owner, as to how socialism benefits a society in general. So listen up. This is a quote from him directly, and I quote, "I think Switzerland has the best form of socialism because the people are in charge of the well-being of the people. And their government is limited and charged with ensuring people will stay in charge as long as the people live up to that commitment. It's socialism funded with capitalism." Okay? End of quote. Take an in-depth look now of what's going on here. You know what, folks, in this country, Metro Detroit, right, in its heyday, achieved a very high standard of living in the post-World War II era when socialists like Reuther, who was the president of the UAW, United Auto Workers Union, forced automakers like Ford and GM to share the wealth, and the sort of benefits they won spread widely throughout the American society. Okay? Benefits like what? Higher pay. For factory work, company paid pensions, company paid hospitalization, sick leave benefits, annual profit sharing checks, and a bunch more. Right? All those benefits compromise what socialism is all about, sharing the wealth with the workers who help produce it. Okay? And that's really why Republicans hate that word, socialism, and try demonizing it at every turn. Because they don't believe in sharing the economic pie, which are the fruits of our labor, our collective labor. Don't believe in sharing it. They want to give all their wealth in this country, in my opinion, right? They want to give all the wealth of this country to their corporate friends and the 1%, since those are the ones who fund the re-election campaigns. Primarily, okay? I'm just speaking in general terms, okay? And we can see the results of their greed and how capitalism has dismantled a lot of the benefits in this country to its citizens. It's reflected in the pulse-free safety net programs we have left in this country. Really, it really is. Okay? Compared to the other countries like Germany, Sweden, and all the Nordic countries. Okay? Personal story now from commondreams.org. I moved to Norway, I moved to Norway in fall 2016 with its free higher education. It was my only chance of getting a master's degree in international relations. In my first years in Norway, despite the fact that I was living on a student budget in Norway, I experienced a quality of life similar to my higher income peers in the United States. The quality of life in Norway has to do with the attitude and beliefs of their citizens. Okay? And that belief system is that everyone must sacrifice some of their own greed for the benefit of the greater society, for the greater good. Right? The viewpoint is totally unthinkable for most Americans here. Okay? But this is what it buys you, right? This is what it buys you. If you think, don't think of yourself. Think of your neighbors. Think of your city. Think of the United States of America. Everybody. Think of benefiting everybody, not just yourself. This is what it buys you. If you agree to pay a little more in taxes, you get universal health care, parental leave, free higher education, vacation, and generous sick leave for everybody. Okay? So what's the takeaway for this segment? The takeaway is this. We Americans need to take a lesson from the French and start protesting for our economic security, to have it, okay? Why? Because so many Americans needlessly suffer financially whenever we encounter sickness, unemployment, or have urgent child care or elder care needs. Okay, let's move on now to our last economic justice story in the news. This one I call it, Can America Still Be Called a First World Country? Before we watch the video clip, let me tell you where we're getting my news sources from. I'm getting it from globalcitizen.org, aljazeera.com, and socialprogress.org. So, let's watch Robert Reich's video clip.
Resembles a developing country in 6 ways. Number 1, political power is concentrated in the hands of the wealthy and corporations. They use their influence to set the rules of the economy for their own gain, giving ordinary citizens almost no say. America resembles a banana republic. Number 2, another way the United States resembles a developing country is the wealthy and corporations keep wages low by gutting protections for workers, busting up unions, and blocking increases in the minimum wage. The typical American worker now earns around $22.65 per hour, not much more than what the typical worker earned 50 years ago, adjusted for inflation. It's often the case in the developing world that wealthy elites and corporations pay little or nothing in taxes and disregard regulations. For decades, America's wealthy and their enablers in government have lobbied for lower taxes and fewer regulations. America's rich are now paying a far lower share of their incomes in taxes than at any time since World War II. Number 6, and finally, developing nations have a low level of social mobility. Children born poor in America have less of a shot at economic success than children born poor in Canada, Denmark, or the United Kingdom.
Pretty depressing stuff, isn't it? Let me give you an overview of what's going on here. The U.S. is now officially ranked a second-tier nation according to the 2017 Social Progress Index at socialprogress.org, which is an annual indicator of how well a country is meeting the social needs of its citizens. The United States came out in 18th place out of 128 countries on the list, behind Spain, Ireland, Canada, and Denmark. Denmark, which scored the highest on the list. Only 6 countries declined in social progress between 2014 and 2018. And those countries were Yemen, Brazil, Thailand, Turkey, Mauritania, and the greatest country in the world, the United States. Let me read those countries again. Only 6 countries declined in social progress between 2014 and 2018. Those countries were Yemen, Brazil, Thailand, Turkey, Mauritania, and the U.S. So let's take a deeper look at what's going on here. The chief executive of SPI, the Social Progress Index, Michael Green, said the U.S. is not addressing basic human needs, it's not equipping citizens to improve the quality of life, not protecting the environment, and not providing opportunity for everyone to reach their full potential. End of quote. For example, he added, if you were born a black man in the New Orleans parish, your average life expectancy is worse than the male average of countries that are much poorer than America. End of quote. The U.S. is the only high-income country that went backwards over the past 4 years in these areas. Health and wellness, access to basic education and knowledge, personal safety, inclusiveness, personal rights, and environmental quality. For now, the world will have to look to countries, Nordic countries, like Norway and Sweden, as role models of social progress. It's not us anymore. Okay? Personal story now. This comes from Al Jazeera. I'll be quoting now from Tanya Parsons. And I quote, I'm a single mom and I make under $11,000 a year. The only way to do well for us is with food stamps, and without it we can't eat. The government reduced the benefit amount, so by the end of the month we ran out of milk, juice, bread, and eggs. It's difficult when one child is only 3, they have health insurance, but I was told I don't qualify for it. In my area, rent is high, and all my income goes to the rent. I don't want to become homeless again, it's really scary. End of quote. So, what's the takeaway from this last economic justice story in the news? Folks, this is just one of many horrific stories of life in America. And with Bernie Sanders out of the running, we need to work together despite our political differences to demand that our political leaders pass economic legislation to strengthen our safety nets so that American families can survive in difficult times without any economic suffering. Without economic suffering. They've had enough. Okay, well that's the show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. And always remember, you deserve the government you vote for. Have a great day.